Well, let's talk about Pruitt, too, because here's the thing about the Pruitt pick that is so stunning. This guy, Pruitt, was essentially the lead attorney general of a couple attorney generals around the country, Republican attorney generals, who were working on, he was from the state of Oklahoma, who have been fighting the implementation of EPA regulations that they statutorily, the Supreme Court has said, they must implement. And so this guy is basically, to the extent that one could be an expert in this, is an expert at fighting against the statutory responsibility and duties of the EPA. So I want people to understand this distinction. It's one thing to put, Ben Carson in at HUD, who has no idea what he's doing. Like, Ben Carson couldn't do, and that's basically the idea. It's like he's just going to have some broad edict where we're just going to give contracts to these people and that's it, and somebody's going to tell him to do that.
You know what my theory, though, also on Ben Carson is, and I think there has to be truth to it. You remember Donald Trump's description during the campaign of cities, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, urban centers were all hellholes, and you can't walk in your neighborhood, who he's talking to, without getting shot. I seriously think, there's no qualifications there. There would be theoretical qualifications for HHS because he was a doctor, even though I don't think he knows a thing about policy. I'm not sure he knows a thing about anything. But I seriously think in Donald Trump's brain, it just was like black guy, urban. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's as far as it went.
I think there's probably something to that as well. But I think the implications of him being there are just going to be, you have someone who doesn't know how to steer the ship. Maybe there'll be a number two that they'll put in there that will figure out how to send money to the right people and whatnot. But at EPA, at the Environmental Protection Agency, they've put in a guy whose job is going to be, because what's going to happen is when the EPA does not maintain the standards that they're supposed to maintain, that they have a legal laws passed by Congress responsibility to do and regulate. Different states like California, New York, and Washington State, maybe Oregon, they'll sue the EPA for not regulating other states who are now, have, I don't know if there'll be coal plants because coal's out of business basically anyways, but they're not regulating these other pollutants that could theoretically harm these other states. They're going to sue, and private individuals are going to sue the EPA.
Sure.
And his job is, he's been picked because he's the expert at creating and thinking of and developing the legal principles to fight against those people who are going to sue the EPA to compel them to uphold the law. Like, he's put in there not just to be incompetent, not just to undercut it, but to fundamentally, legally deconstruct the entire foundations of the agency called the Environmental Protection Agency.
That's correct. Maybe the Koch brothers didn't have enough faith in Donald Trump after all. Well, I can't believe they could have wanted anybody better than this guy.
There is literally no, and there, there was an article in, I have it right here. Here it is. I think I showed this the other day. There's an article in New York Times, energy firms in secretive alliance with attorneys general. This is a New York Times piece from 2014.
Yep.
The picture on the front is a picture of Scott Pruitt. That's the picture of the guy. And
he's in the dictionary, I think.
His co-chair, when he ran for re-election for Attorney General, was this guy, Harold Hamm, who is the president. I don't know if it's Harold Hamm or what. The president of one of these fracking companies. It was his co-chair of his campaign. All of these oil companies would write up documents to fight the Environmental Protection Agency's actions. And he literally would change like 30 words and just put the imprimatur of Attorney General from Oklahoma on the top of the page. I mean, it's just.
He seems like a quality guy.
Extraordinary.
No, it is. And, lack of any kind of So, I mean, you either have people that are there to completely undo their agencies, and then, as you said, the other model seems to be people that just have no idea what they're doing, so they'll be incompetent enough to undermine their agency's mission anyhow,
Right.
even if they're not trying to actively do it.
Right.
I mean, and then there's just like random crazy stuff. I mean, the Bobby Valentine thing for Japan was hilarious. Did you see all that?
I haven't dug into. I mean, look, when you talk.
Bobby Valentine was a guy who spent a couple of years in Japan coaching, managing a team. Otherwise, when he was with the Mets, pretty much got run out of town for being too obnoxious for New York. That's definitely a diplomat.
I think on a lot of the foreign policy stuff, I think the idea is just full on chaos. I honestly think like I think that Bolton stopping by there, Bannon's in there. I think their attitude is just like, look, just put in people who will feel comfortable be there. I don't know that Bramstead. He has a relationship with the Chinese leadership. He's been dealing with them. But it's all, it's and it's very much about, business and agriculture. But I think that they are just not taking the foreign policy. I think they think it's been treated too preciously and that it's not so fragile. And that the more sort of like insanity we put out there as a country, the more it's going to keep everybody in the world on their toes. Like they're not going to know. Like this Bobby Valentine
unpredictability.
Thing.
Remember, you always
honestly,
said that.
I honestly think that's what it is. It's a chaos theory on that end.
Well, luckily, nothing ever really goes bad when there's chaos, so we can be happy about that.
Well, we're going to test that principle. I mean, that principle is going to be
clearly
tested. It's going to be interesting to see how that winds up. Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Over. Subscribe.